Okay, so 3-day work week.
I kind of say the idea of a 4-day weekend every week
Oh, yeah.
sounds pretty amazing.
Right.
You know me, I'm always down for a good life hack.
Of course. You sent over these excerpts from 3-day work week, a reality check by Conrad Riker.
Mm-hmm.
And
I'm thinking we need to, like, really dissect this,
yeah.
you know, separate the dream from the reality here.
Yeah, it's a hot topic, and for good reason.
Right.
I mean, a shorter work week, who wouldn't want that?
Exactly.
But, like you said, we need a reality check.
Yeah.
So let's look into, like, the history of work weeks,
Okay.
the economics of it all,
Mm-hmm.
and, of course, the tech angle.
Gotta have the tech.
Yeah, because where would we be
Right.
without our gadgets and all of this?
It seems like every other day there's some new AI promising to make our jobs obsolete. But
Before we get ahead of ourselves,
sure,
the book actually starts us way back.
absolutely.
Right.
Riker kicks things off with Robert Owen,
Oh.
a 19th century thinker who was really pushing for a 10-hour workday.
10 hours.
Which, yeah, I know it sounds almost laughable today,
Right.
but back then, during the Industrial Revolution,
Yeah.
16-hour workdays were the norm.
Wow.
So Owen was considered a radical.
16 hours.
Yeah.
That's wild. It really makes you realize, like, how much our perception of work has changed.
Totally.
But this idea that, like, technology might free us from long hours,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a new idea either, is it?
No, not at all.
The book mentions John Maynard Keynes.
Exactly.
Keynes was an economist back in the 1930s,
Okay.
and he actually predicted that by 2030, we'd only be working 15-hour work weeks,
Yeah, really?
thanks to technology.
Wow.
Yeah, and now we're getting pretty close to 2030.
That's true.
And most of us would be pretty thrilled with a 15-hour work week.
I know, I would be. He wasn't totally wrong, though, was he? I mean, you think about, like, how much more efficient we are now,
Right.
thanks to computers,
Exactly.
the internet, all that stuff.
Technology has made us incredibly efficient,
Yeah.
but here's the catch.
What's the catch?
We haven't necessarily translated that efficiency into less work.
Oh, interesting.
We've used it to produce more, to do more, to be on all the time.
Yeah, it's true.
So the question becomes, can we break free from that cycle?
Right.
Can we actually use technology to work less
Mm-hmm.
while maintaining or even, like, boosting our productivity?
And that's where the 3-day work week comes in, right?
Potentially.
Yeah. But the book mentions that not all attempts at this have been successful.
Right.
It talks about Merthyr, Vermont,
Vermont, yes.
this tiny town that went to a 3-day work week
Interesting.
back in the late 90s
Okay.
and apparently thrived.
Okay.
But, like, is that really a realistic model?
Yeah.
For everyone.
It's a great story, and Riker uses it to really illustrate that it can be done.
Sure.
But you're right to be skeptical.
Okay.
Mirth was unique.
Okay.
It was this small, service-based economy.
Mm-hmm.
It's not exactly your bustling metropolis.
Right.
You know.
It's a very specific example.
Exactly. And the challenges of implementing a 3-day work week in, like, a manufacturing hub, for example, would be very different.
For sure.
You know.
Okay, so scale and type of work matter.
Yeah.
But what about just, like, the impact on productivity in general?
Okay.
I mean, that's got to be the biggest concern for businesses.
Of course, yeah.
Right. You work less, you get less done.
Right.
Seems kind of obvious.
Seems pretty straightforward.
But Riker would argue that it's not that simple.
Oh, really?
He cites studies that suggest that our productivity actually peaks
Okay.
around 2.5 days of work
Wow.
and then starts to decline.
Get out of here.
We get burnt out,
Yeah,
less focused.
it's true.
And there's even a real-world example he uses, Microsoft Japan.
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
They implemented a 4-day work week,
Uh-huh.
and productivity went up.
It went way up.
We're talking a 40% increase.
40%. That's incredible.
And here's the kicker.
What's that?
They didn't cut pay.
Oh,
Employees got the same salary for a shorter work week.
that's amazing.
Everybody wins.
Okay, I'm starting to see the appeal here.
Right.
But the book also mentions a company called Treehouse,
Okay.
a tech company that tried a 3-day week
Hmm.
and actually saw productivity plummet.
Interesting.
So what went wrong there?
That's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And unfortunately, there's no easy answer.
Okay.
But Riker suggests that the success of a 3-day work week depends on a lot of factors.
Like what?
The industry,
Okay.
the company culture,
Mm-hmm.
and crucially, how it's implemented.
Okay, so it's not as simple as just saying everyone work 3 days and we'll be more productive.
Right.
There's a strategy involved.
It's not a magic bullet.
You got to adapt it to your specific context.
Yeah. Exactly. And this is where we really start to see the reality check. of Riker's book.
Okay.
He's not just blindly advocating for a 3-day work week.
Mm-hmm.
He's acknowledging the complexities, the nuances that we need to consider if we really want to make this work.
Which brings us to, I think, another layer of complexity.
Okay.
Technology.
Of course.
Riker talks about how AI automation,
Mm-hmm.
all those things we hear about constantly, are making a 3-day week more realistic.
But he also points out the downside.
Right.
Those same technologies can lead to job losses?
For sure.
So is this a double-edged sword?
It's a bit like the Industrial Revolution all over again.
Oh, wow.
This time of massive disruption and change.
Mm-hmm.
Remember when ATMs were first introduced?
Yeah.
People panicked,
Oh.
thinking bank tellers would be out of work.
Right.
But here's the thing.
What happened?
Banks actually ended up opening more branches
Real?
and hiring more tellers.
Wait, I know this one. They did because the ATMs made them so much more efficient.
You got it.
That increased efficiency allowed for expansion,
Yeah.
for new types of jobs to emerge.
Interesting.
So what if this new wave of technology from AI to automation could lead to new jobs,
Right.
jobs we can't even imagine yet?
So instead of fearing that robots are going to take our jobs,
Mm-hmm.
we should be thinking about the jobs robots might create.
Exactly. It's about shifting our perspective.
Okay.
Riker argues that instead of focusing solely on the potential job losses,
Mm-hmm.
we need to consider the potential for a happier, healthier workforce
Oh.
with more time for leisure, for creativity, for contributing to their communities.
Interesting.
This could lead to a different kind of economy,
Okay.
one that's less about endless growth
Mm-hmm.
and more about well-being and sustainability.
Sounds pretty utopian, but I like where your head's at.
Right.
But even with all this potential,
Riker acknowledges there are hurdles.
of course.
Like what happens when things get tough.
Right. What happens when
You know?
he uses the example of the UK's attempt at a 3-day work week back in 1974.
Oh, really?
They were in the middle of an energy crisis.
Oh, wow.
And it seemed like a good idea at the time, but
It flopped.
it did.
And part of the reason was that it simply wasn't economically feasible in the long run.
Interesting.
So that raises the question. Is a 3-day work week only a possibility during times of economic prosperity?
That's a sobering thought.
Yeah.
It's easy to get excited about working less when things are good, but what happens when times are tough?
Well, Riker argues that a big part of the problem is our mindset.
What do you mean?
We're so used to equating long hours with success,
Oh, interesting.
with productivity.
That it's hard to imagine a different way of working.
So you're saying we need a paradigm shift,
Yeah.
a whole new way of defining what success looks like.
Exactly.
It's about redefining success, not just by how many hours we work, but by the quality of our work, the time we have for ourselves and our loved ones and our overall well-being.
That's a pretty radical idea,
It is.
but I think one that a lot of people are starting to resonate with.
Yeah, and I think we're seeing the shift towards
Yeah,
prioritizing well-being purpose and a more balanced life.
for sure.
And maybe a 3-day work week is part of that shift.
Maybe it is.
Yeah.
But as we've been discussing, there are a lot of questions we need to answer.
Oh, absolutely.
A lot of challenges to address.
For sure.
Which is what we'll do as we continue to deep dive into Conrad Riker's book.
Let's do it. You know, one of the things Riker digs into that I found fascinating
Yeah.
is how different sectors might be impacted by a 3-day work week.
Okay.
Like imagine the changes in retail
Interesting.
and consumer behavior.
Ooh, that's juicy. Would people just shop more if they had an extra 2 days off?
Right.
Or would we see a shift in like what people value and how they spend their money and all that?
Those are the million-dollar questions.
Right.
Right. And Riker tackles them head on.
Okay.
He talks about the potential for a surge in leisure activities, maybe a boom for like travel and entertainment industries.
Yeah.
And then there's the question of
Right.
brick and mortar stores versus online shopping.
Sure.
Would people be more likely to hit the mall with that extra free time or just click and chill?
And let's not forget about the gig economy.
Oh, right.
People could use those extra days off to freelance, pursue passion projects, build side hustles.
It's like this whole other layer of the workforce could just explode.
Precisely. Riker suggests that we might even see like a blurring of the lines between traditional employment and gig work, with people crafting these really flexible hybrid careers that blend the best of both worlds.
That's a fascinating thought, especially with remote work already kind of like changing the game.
Right.
But speaking of potential downsides,
Yeah.
one thing that keeps coming up in these discussions about the 3-day work week is the impact on part-time workers.
Absolutely. Riker doesn't shy away from that.
Okay.
He asks the tough questions like,
What's that?
would part-time workers see their hours reduced even further?
Right.
Would a 3-day work week create more demand for part-timers as companies try to cover the gaps?
Okay.
It's a bit of a double-edged sword.
It's like we're talking about this domino effect here, right? Like shifting to a 3-day work week could have all these ripple effects on different parts of the economy, different types of workers.
Exactly. And we have to consider those ripple effects carefully.
Okay.
Riker stresses the importance of thoughtful implementation.
Yeah.
Policies that actually protect workers' rights and ensure that the benefits of a shorter work week are shared equitably.
Okay.
He talks about the role of unions, for example,
in
advocating for fair wages and working conditions in this new landscape.
Makes sense. Unions have always been on the front lines of protecting workers' rights.
For sure.
They'll probably be instrumental in shaping how a 3-day work week actually plays out.
Absolutely.
In the real world.
And Riker also highlights the need for government policies that support this shift.
Like what?
Things like tax incentives for companies that adopt a shorter work week.
Okay.
Or programs that provide income support.
Right.
For workers who might see their hours reduced in the transition.
Interesting.
It's going to take a collaborative effort.
It's a team effort. Businesses, workers, and the government all working together.
I like it.
To figure out how to make this work.
Yeah.
For everybody.
For everyone.
It's a big ask.
It is.
Yeah.
Let's shift gears a bit here.
Okay.
And talk about something a little more, human.
Okay.
We've talked about the economics, the logistics.
But what about the impact on our lives outside of work?
Okay.
Our relationships, our communities, even our values.
Okay.
Would a 3-day work week change all that?
Riker certainly thinks so.
Really?
He argues that a 3-day work week isn't just about working less.
Okay.
It's about fundamentally changing how we live.
Wow.
He envisions stronger communities, more engaged citizens, and a greater focus on well-being and personal fulfillment.
Okay, I have to admit that sounds pretty idyllic.
Right.
But how would a 3-day work week actually lead to those kinds of changes?
Well, for one thing, imagine having more time and energy to invest in your community.
Okay.
Riker talks about how people might be more likely to volunteer, to participate in local government, to simply connect with their neighbors.
Interesting.
A shorter work week could lead to a resurgence of civic engagement.
That's an interesting thought. We often hear about how, burned out and overscheduled people are these days.
Right.
It makes sense that if you give people more time, they might actually use it to, get involved in things they care about.
Exactly. And imagine the impact that could have.
Yeah.
Stronger communities, more vibrant democracies, a greater sense of shared purpose.
Right.
It's a pretty inspiring vision.
It is.
But as with everything, there are potential downsides.
Sure.
What about the risk of people becoming more isolated if you're spending less time at work?
Right.
The
office is a social space for a lot of people.
That's a valid concern.
Yeah.
And Riker addresses it head on.
Okay.
He suggests that we might need to find new ways to foster social connections outside of work.
Okay.
Perhaps community centers could play a larger role, or we might see a rise in co-working spaces.
Right.
But geared towards more social activities and hobbies.
So it's not just about working less.
Right.
It's about rethinking how we structure our lives,
exactly,
our community, our social spaces to create a world where work isn't the only place we connect with others.
I like that.
Yeah.
And speaking of connections, what about families?
Oh, yeah, families. That's a big one.
Right. Would more time off lead to stronger family bonds?
Right.
Or would it create new tensions and challenges?
Right. Exactly.
That's the age-old question.
Totally. Work-life balance.
Work-life balance, yeah.
It's something so many people I know struggle with. I can see how a 3-day work week could be a game changer for families.
Yeah.
But I can also see how it could backfire.
Riker explores both sides of that coin.
Oh, does he?
On the one hand, he suggests that a shorter work week could give parents more time to spend with their children.
Okay.
To be more present and engaged. It could also mean less reliance on childcare.
Oh, right.
Which could have a significant financial benefit for a lot of families.
It's that dream of being able to pick your kids up from school,
Right.
Go to their soccer games, actually have dinner together as a family.
Yeah.
Without rushing off to the next commitment.
Exactly. But Riker also acknowledges the potential pitfalls.
Okay.
For example,
what's that?
if one parent transitions to a 3-day work week,
Okay.
while the other still works a traditional schedule, it could create an imbalance in household labor and childcare responsibilities.
It's like we can't just assume that more free time will magically solve all of our work-life balance problems.
Right. It's not a magic bullet.
We need to be mindful of the potential pitfalls and make sure we're not creating new inequalities within families.
Exactly. Riker stresses the importance of open communication, flexible work arrangements, and supportive policies like paid parental leave.
Right.
To ensure that a shorter work week benefits both partners and strengthens families rather than creating new stressors.
It all comes back to that idea of being intentional and thoughtful.
Totally.
Right.
About how we implement these changes.
Yeah. It's not enough to just...
We can't just assume that a 3-day work week is a magic bullet
that
will solve all our problems.
It's about being aware of the potential consequences, both positive and negative.
Okay.
And working together to create solutions that benefit everyone.
It's a continuous process of evaluation and adaptation.
Exactly. Riker encourages us to view this not as a one-time shift, but as an ongoing experiment.
Interesting.
The process of learning and adjustment as we navigate this new world of work.
So it's not just about working less. It's about fundamentally rethinking our relationship with work.
Yes.
With our families, with our communities, even with ourselves.
You've hit the nail on the head. It's about challenging those
deeply ingrained assumptions.
Right.
About productivity success. And what it means to live a fulfilling life.
Which brings us back to that idea of redefining success that we talked about earlier. Riker seems to be suggesting that a 3-day work week isn't just about having more free time.
Right.
It's about fundamentally changing how we measure success. In all aspects of our lives.
He challenges us to question those traditional markers of success.
Like what?
You know, the corner office, the 6-figure salary.
Right.
The never-ending pursuit of more.
Okay.
What if, instead of measuring our worth by how much we work, we focused on the quality of our work, the strength of our relationships, our contributions to our communities, and our overall well-being?
It's a pretty radical idea.
It is.
But one that I think resonates with a lot of people.
Totally.
We're seeing this growing desire for a more balanced and meaningful life.
For sure.
A life where work is just one piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture.
Absolutely. And Riker's book really speaks to that desire.
Yeah.
It offers us this glimpse of a future
where
work is no longer seen as separate from the rest of our lives, but as integrated with our values, our passions, and our aspirations for a better world.
It's a future where work doesn't just sustain us financially.
Right.
It nourishes us emotionally, intellectually, even spiritually.
Beautifully put.
And a future where we have the time and energy to pursue those things that bring us joy, to connect with our communities, and to make a positive impact on the world around us.
Now that's a future I can get behind.
Right.
But, as we've been discussing, getting there won't be easy.
Of course not.
There are practical challenges, economic considerations, and societal hurdles to overcome.
Absolutely. But I think one of the most important takeaways from Riker's book is that the future of work is not predetermined.
Okay, what do you mean?
It's not some inevitable outcome that's been decided for us.
Okay.
We have the power to shape it.
Okay.
To create a world where work works for everyone.
Right.
Not just a select few.
It's about reclaiming our time, redefining our values, and rewriting the rules of the game.
Yes.
It's a tall order.
It is.
But I think it's a challenge worth taking on.
I couldn't agree more. And while a 3-day work week might not be the silver bullet solution for everyone, it's a powerful catalyst for starting these conversations and exploring new possibilities for the future of work.
You know, something we haven't really touched on yet
is the whole environmental impact of a shorter work week.
Right.
I have to admit, when I think about changing the world of work, saving the planet isn't usually the first thing that pops into my head.
It's an angle that often gets overlooked.
Yeah.
But Riker dedicates a whole section to it.
Okay.
And it's pretty eye-opening. He argues that a 3-day work week could significantly shrink our carbon footprint.
Okay.
Both on an individual and a societal level.
Okay. I get how, like, commuting less would help, but what else?
How does working 3 days instead of 5
really move the needle on the environment?
Well, think about it. Fewer days in the office means less energy consumption.
That's true.
Office buildings are massive energy hogs.
They are.
From lighting and heating to all those computers running all the time. Then there's the reduction in resources.
What do you mean?
We'd use less paper, fewer office supplies.
Right.
All that stuff that gets consumed in a typical 5-day work week.
It's like a ripple effect.
Totally.
One change leads to another.
Exactly.
And suddenly we're making a dent in our environmental impact without even really trying.
Exactly. And that's not even factoring in the potential shifts in consumer behavior.
Oh, interesting.
Riker argues that with more free time
yeah?
and maybe a different perspective on work-life balance, people might be less likely to engage in that mindless consumerism.
Oh, okay.
That constant need for more.
So it's not just about working less, it's about consuming less, too.
Right.
It's about shifting our values and priorities away from that relentless pursuit of more and towards something more sustainable and fulfilling.
Precisely. And that shift in values could have a profound impact on the environment.
Wow.
Far beyond just the direct impact of a shorter work week.
That's pretty powerful. You know, as we've been talking about all these different aspects of a 3-day work week,
right?
The economic implications, the societal shifts, the technological advancements, it's clear that this is about more than just working less.
It really is.
It's about fundamentally reimagining how we live, how we interact with the world around us.
Absolutely. It's about challenging those deeply ingrained assumptions
Right.
about what work is, what it should look like, and how it should fit into our lives.
And I think what I appreciate about Riker's book is that he doesn't necessarily have all the answers.
Right.
But he does something I think even more important.
What's that?
He asks the right questions.
He does.
He challenges us to think differently, to imagine a better future, and to start taking steps to create that future.
Yes.
One experiment, one conversation, one policy change at a time.
I couldn't have said it better myself.
The future of work is not predetermined.
Yeah.
It's something that we create together through our choices, our actions, and our willingness to embrace new possibilities.
So to everyone listening, what will you do with this information?
What will you do with the gift of possibility?
That's something to ponder, I think.
Yeah.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the 3-day work week.
It's been a good one.
Thanks for joining us. And until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those conversations flowing.